Welcome, everyone. I am Mallory Newell. I'm the project lead for the Multiple Measures Assessment Project. I'm also the Director of Institutional Research and Planning at De Anza College. And I'm joined here by my colleague, Loris. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Loris. I'm Director of Research Planning and Accreditation at Urban Valley College and also the member of the MAP team.
Great. So again, thank you for joining us. We will post these slides and the recording on the Multiple Measures Assessment Project website, probably in a couple days. And what we'll do today is just walk you through the current dashboard that has been available, just to remind people that it's available and what the two current views are. And then we're going to walk you through the brand new view, which was just posted, I believe, yesterday, which is the BSTEM and SLAM outcomes view. And then I do believe that you'll have to submit your questions through the Q&A, and I'll try to address as many of those as we go. But at the very end, we'll have our email addresses posted. And if there's any questions that we have not answered, please do email us any of your questions. And I do believe you can raise your hand as well in this webinar format. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So there's now 3 views on the transfer level dashboard, and we have the bit.ly link there if you want to explore it as we go, the throughput bit.ly/throughputdb. And so the views that you may have already explored are the statewide or college view. It's the first tab when you get into the dashboard, and it shows the transfer level completions and the completion rate, so the number of students who successfully completed. And you can disaggregate it, either look at statewide or by your individual college or other colleges. And then it also includes a wide variety of disaggregations by various demographics. The other view that you probably have already explored as well is the regional view, and this is one of my favorite views. It allows users to compare the transfer level completions by region, so colleges within their immediate area, or you can also compare, your area and add additional colleges into that region. And then it also includes various disaggregations as well. For the statewide and regional view, we did just recently update the data, so it now has the most current data that we have available to us, which is the 21-22 cohort. And then the view that is most new and most exciting is the BSTEM SLAM view, and it includes the transfer level math completions and those rates. And you can look at it statewide or by college. And then it's by the 2 different pathways, BSTEM or SLAM. And then we also include a variety of different disaggregations by demographics. So for the data across all 3 views, it includes all of the community colleges that submit data to the MIS system. We go back to fall 2011, and then we have data through summer 2022. A successful completion includes students who receive any of the passing grades in A, B, C, P, or CR, and then their corresponding plus and minus grades. And then when we're looking at English courses and math courses, that we have identified them by the top code. So English top codes include 1501, and then math courses include the top code of 1701, but then we probably have about 15 other top codes that are outside of math that are statistics courses, like psych statistics or sociology statistics and so on. And those are also included in all of the views. We also use the MIS code of CB21 equal to Y, which means that the course is not prior to college level, as well as CB05 of the code of A or B, which means it's transferable to CSU or UC. And we use those 2 codes together to make sure that we are tracking transfer level outcomes. And we have noticed that some colleges, have contacted us and been like, oh, why do you have this class as, below transfer level? And then we'll look it up, and it's because they have incorrectly coded their course as Y or so on. So if you do see any issues, you can contact us and we can look into the data. And then the CB05 edition is somewhat new. It was added with this most recent update for the 2022 cohort. And if you wanted to see the comparison of how the addition of the CB05 changed, It didn't change the rates at the statewide level, but there were some small differences at the college level, and we disaggregate those in the dashboard document, which is available on one of the pages on the dashboard itself. All right, so for the statewide and regional view for successful completions, what does successful completion mean? And it's really that a throughput rate, which you're probably all now familiar with. So we're calling it a completion rate, and it's the percentage of students in any cohort that you select the year who successfully complete the transfer level course in English or math within the specified time frame which you select. So you can select 1 term up to 3 years. And then the cohort is defined by the student's starting level, which is either transfer level, 1 level below, 2 levels below, and the academic year in which a student had their very first enrollment in English or math. So it was their very first entry into the discipline. And then it also includes all transfer level attempts within the time frame that you've selected. And that is another change that we made a few years ago, where the earlier versions, we only had 2 attempts, and now it's all of their attempts within the time frame that we have available. And so that's for the first 2 views, the statewide and the regional views. Thanks, Loris. And then the disaggregations that we include for this, the first tab, the statewide or college view, we have quite a few: age, Puente, Emoja. We added first generation status. This is new to this iteration, and we follow the same methodology as the launch board. But the other disaggregations have all been consistent within the dashboard. And then, so this is just an example of what you'll see when you log on, is that the first tab is the statewide or college view. And you can see the tabs at the top, and that's how you navigate around the different views. And then here I just have selected statewide, English, and I have 1 year for all starting levels, and a fall only start. And so you can see the completion rate and the completion count. And then you can see the percentage point gap methodology for ethnicity. And then you can change the disaggregations here using the filters. The next view is the regional view. And again, very similar layout here, but the regional view is now displaying DI across the different colleges within the region for the different demographic groups. And so you can see that, for example, Hispanic students have DI across all of the colleges within the region that's selected, which I think is the Bay Area region. And then you can also change the year cohort and see how the DI may have changed over time as well. So those are the first 2 views, the statewide and regional view. And now I'm going to turn it over to Loris, and he's going to explore the BSTEM and SLAM views. And do please put your questions into the Q&A as we go, and I'll try to answer those.
Thanks, Mallory. So this one is, I think, a slightly more complicated view, and there's some definitions in terms of cohorts. And so I'm trying to explain these kind of nuances, but we are very happy if you could also ask us questions or post them in the chat if it's not very clear. I think the very first thing with identifying a student on a BSTEM or SLAM pathway, I think all the researchers on this call know this. There is, at the very beginning, you have to make a very conceptual choice of saying, how are you going to identify a student on which pathway? And so for this dashboard, we have chosen the behavioral approach. So we are not going by what they tell us, either through an application or on their map. There's many different reasons why we have not chosen this one. So we've taken by behavior. So we're taking, if a student shows us by the way they are enrolling in a certain course, we're assuming that is the pathway that they're on. So in this case, it is if a student's first transfer level course is either in trigonometry, college algebra, pre-calculus, or some calculus course, we're assuming that student is on a BSTEM pathway. So that student will be assigned to the BSTEM pathway. If a student's first transfer level course is in liberal arts math or in statistics, we're assuming that student is in SLAM. So those are the is kind of the big thing to consider when you are looking at this BSTEM and SLAM view. It is by behavior. So we're showing you the behavior. Another thing that needs to be taken into account is we are not limiting it to students who started at transfer level. So all students who started below transfer, especially for earlier cohorts, they're still included, but we've excluded anybody who did not make it up to the transfer level, which makes sense if we take the behavioral approach. If somebody is stuck at 3 levels or 2 levels below in math, we will never know behaviorally if that student was actually a BSTEM or SLAM student. So for that reason, our rates are actually an optimal rate. It's actually most likely an underestimation of the true BSTEM or SLAM throughput because we're excluding anybody who did not make it to the transfer level. So the sample of the students, which is slightly different to the other two views, is any student, they can start at any point, 3 levels below, 2 levels below, but they have to have at least attempted one transfer level course. And as soon as a student attempts one transfer level course, we are able to assign them to either a BSTEM or a SLAM pathway. So that's kind of the first thing, and I'll reiterate it, and I'll show you also in the dashboard how that looks depending on how you make the selections. The cohort is very similarly defined to prior. So the cohort is defined by their first math attempt in the sequence. So that's how they are assigned to a specific cohort year. And again, their first transfer course assigns them either into a BSTEM or SLAM pathway. However, as we know, sometimes students' behaviors and also intent changes. So let's say a student thinks they want to be on BSTEM, but realizes, no, you know what, I'm changing my major and I don't need calculus anymore, I need statistics. They can change. And so in the view, you can actually switch between their starting pathway and the outcome. And so if the outcome does not match the pathway, the cohort slightly changes. So the cohort will change, again, behaviorally. If a student first tries a BSTEM course, they get assigned to the BSTEM pathway. But if they then take statistics or liberal arts, we then assign you essentially to the switching cohort that switches the pathway. And so I'll just leave it at that for now, and you'll see some examples below, and also in the dashboard, it'll make more sense when you see it live. The outcomes, and this is the difference, and this is why we're excited about this, the prior two views aggregate all transfer level courses into one group. So if you've completed any transfer level course, you are considered a success in kind of the throughput view of the first two views. Here, as in math, it gets disaggregated further. So you can actually calculate throughput to statistics, throughput to calculus 1 or applied calculus, or throughput to calculus 2. So this is kind of the exciting new thing, that especially for math, you can now calculate throughputs to different levels of math achievement, not just overall any transfer level course. This here, we have here just for reference for all math faculty who might be interested in this, how these courses are defined with the CID numbers. If you have any questions there in terms of, for instance, applied calculus or business calculus compared to calculus 1, we combine those two for now, calculus 2, etc. You see the CID numbers and also the statistics and liberal arts definitions on these slides. All right. So again, I'm just showing you conceptually before we actually show you how that looks like in the dashboard. So let's assume we select the filters at the top. You see here, filters 18-19. So we select a cohort of students who started in 18-19, meaning their first math course anywhere in the sequence was in 18-19. We're looking at statewide numbers. We're looking at a 2-year time frame, meaning we're checking after 2 years after their first math course, have they completed the outcome that you select? And let's also assume we select the SLAM pathway, meaning the students, after they potentially completed some below transfer level coursework, their first transfer level course was a SLAM course. So maybe let's say assume statistics. So scenario 1, the outcome is within the pathway. So the first transfer level course is statistics or liberal arts. and we select statistics, liberal arts as the outcome, the completion rate in the dashboard will show 66%, meaning 70,600 students have completed statistics within a 2-year time frame after they've taken their first math course in 1819. I think that one is fairly clear, and it is similarly if you select a BSTEM pathway with BSTEM outcomes. It is always the completion rate of the outcome that you selected given their first enrollment in the transfer level course. However, scenario 2 is, let's say you select first transfer level course is statistics, liberal arts, meaning they started in the SLAM pathway, but you select the Calculus 1 outcome, which means Calculus 1 is typically the BSTEM, a BSTEM outcome. So what if a student started in statistics, but you want to see how many have actually completed Calculus 1? That changes the cohort size. As you see, the initial cohort of students who started in statistics and completed statistics is 106,000. Started their first transfer level course was 106,000. Now it's much smaller. It's only 12,000. Why is that? The reason for that is again, behaviorally, we will only count you in that cohort if we actually see that you've attempted at least one BSTEM course. So your first transfer level course might have been statistics, but then we see that you've at least attempted one other BSTEM course. It could be college algebra, it could be trigonometry, it could be calculus, assuming that you have either switched the pathway, and how many of those have actually completed Calculus 1. Of course, many of you will know, for instance, for business majors, that might actually not be uncommon, right? It might be statistics is required as well as calculus. And so you might start with statistics, but you end with calculus. So that those might be some business students. So they might not be switchers. They might not have switched. They might actually always stayed on their business pathway. But there are some others who've switched too. So here you see the cohort slightly changes that way. All right, so here I will first show you just kind of some screenshots, also for reference for those who might not be able to join the webinar, or if you want to review it later. So I'll first show you some screenshots, and then I'll switch over to the live version of the dashboard. So here you see it looks very similar. So it's the third tab at the very top. The first view again shows you the throughput rate, meaning the rate given the cohort that you've defined. You see the volume of completers right below. And again, you see the disaggregation depending on the disaggregation you have selected. Those big bubbles, by the way, that you see, for instance, for African-American students and Hispanic students here, means they are DI, meaning there is a disproportionate impact. They are statistically different from the average sample. So there is a true difference between those compared to the Asian and white students, even though Asian line is above the white line, that those two are not statistically different from the average, whereas the African-American and Hispanic rates are. So that's where those big bubbles and the little bubbles come into play. Another thing that you will see is kind of the very light shaded bar at the very right. It shows you the selected time frame is incomplete. So for 21-22, we don't have all the data yet for all the different starting levels of 2021 and 2022 to be complete, meaning those rates might actually still go up. Currently, if a student has not completed it within, right now we have 1 year selected, that student might show up as a 0, meaning they have not completed the outcome, but they might complete it right now. Maybe this semester they will complete it, and then they will actually show up as a 1 once we have a full data set for those. So just be aware that those lightly shaded blue lines are most likely an underestimation, and they sometimes creep up a little bit once we have full data available. All right, let's go through some things here. So you can hover over the I button, the info button, for more information. There's also more information on the webpage. There's quite a few links in terms of methodology and data and caveats. So for anybody who has questions, consult those first. And as Mallory said, several colleges have already contacted us and say, hey, these numbers look funky for us. Can you help us explain it? Please contact me directly and we can look at your specific college numbers if they do not match what you see with your internal data. Second, so you see how this throughput rate here is defined. So it's the throughput rate for students who start in SLAM, who complete statistics in 1 year. So those rates that you see are right there explained what it is, depending on your selection. Again, I mentioned the incomplete one, so incomplete window. The rates might still change for the lightly shaded blue. Here you will select the first transfer level course. The first transfer level course means this is not necessarily their first math course. Below transfer levels courses are included. However, this is their first math course that they've selected. So especially this matters for BSTEM, so you can disaggregate if a student started in college algebra or started in trigonometry, depending on your selection. So these two are important. I've mentioned this now 2 times already. So you select the pathway. So in this instance, we've selected the SLAM pathway and we've selected the statistics outcome, which means the outcome is within the pathway we've selected. So that is a certain cohort. If there is a mismatch between the pathway and the outcome, the cohort and the sample sizes change. So just be aware that however you make the selections in those filters on the right, it kind of slightly changes the definition of the cohort. This one is the volume of completion. So you see the number of students who completed compared to the rate, which sometimes hides the actual sample size. And here, as I mentioned, these small little dots show there is no disproportionate impact compared to those large bubbles. They show that there is DI present. All right, so we still have time to look at a live demo, but before I do that, let me see if there's any questions or in the chat. Mallory, is there anything we can address right now?
Yeah, I have 2 questions that I wanted to leave for you. So what about students who sign up for statistics and business calc in the same first semester? So those are their first attempts at transfer level at the same time. Will they be STEM or SLAM?
It's a very good question. I will have to get back to you. I'll see how those are defined. I could be either they're counted in both areas, or I have to check how that is. That's a very good question. Thank you.
Yeah, and then the other question you had answered, but it came up twice, so I just wanted to reiterate it, that business majors often take stats first. So then they're saying, what would happen in that situation, that they take stats and then go to Calc 1.
Exactly. So thank you, Mark. Yeah, that's exactly for that reason we give that option. So for students who start in stats but actually want to finish in calculus, it just changes their cohort size slightly. But those we have a way to account for those who are essentially business majors. All right. All right, so let me switch over to the live dashboard. Mallory, can you see that?
Yes.
All right, so here you see, again, this one was the statewide or college view that Mallory explained. So many of you have already seen this one. The only addition here is that we have 1 new year. Then you have the regional view where you can select here which big area you want, or you can also select individual colleges that are in here, and it just kind of gives you the comparison within the region. But what I want to spend some time here is the BSTEM SLAM one. So here you see some definitions as soon as you hover over it. Here you can select your college or the statewide numbers. Here you can select, for instance, a different time frame. And as soon as you do select 2 years, you see that now 2 cohorts potentially have not full data yet because we've not observed those full 2 years for all starts. So not just the fall starts, but the spring and summer starts within a year potentially have not had 365 days observed yet. So here you see when you select SLAM as a pathway and statistics, and the outcome is statistics. So those are kind of the throughput numbers that you see that have gone up since 2011. So there is both more students completing statistics as well as the rate of students who are in SLAM has gone up over time. Now let's select, for instance, this discussion that we had. Let's switch the outcome that is not within the pathway. So if you look here, you have 2 years. The students started in statistics, so their first transfer level course was statistics, but we're going to look at Calculus 1 or applied calculus as the outcome of interest. So here you see there was very few students who did that in the very beginning or who completed this in 2 years, and has dramatically increased over time. So many more students are potentially doing that. And again, potentially these are some business students. And you see a very dramatic change too in terms of completion rates. There was very, very few who successfully did that compared to now. These rates have gone up quite dramatically for those who started in statistics and are able to complete Calculus 1 within a 2-year time frame. Now, again, I want to iterate, this is their first transfer level course. This is not necessarily their first math course. So this includes students who potentially started 1 or 2 or 3 levels below, but have made it to statistics within a time frame. So this is not their first math course, but their first transfer level course. It includes students starting below. Let's switch to BSTEM. So sometimes when this happens, so if you do this and you see it empty, it's just because we've had different selections here in the filters. You just have to kind of select these ones differently again. So this is kind of the BSTEM throughput rate. So if you're looking at students who started in any BSTEM course and complete Calculus 1 or applied calculus. So here too, you see the volume has gone up by 50+%. And the rates have slowly creeped up as well. So there is more, the percent of students who complete that. Here, you can disaggregate for where they started essentially in their first transfer level course. Again, it includes students below transfer. But let's say if you were in pre-calculus, so here you see also the rate slowly going up. You can see here going in college algebra. Obviously, it takes longer if you start further below, and these rates are fairly low because it includes students who were below transfer, and that might be very tough for them to complete it within 2 years. So you see these rates slightly higher if you give them more time.
Loris, could you just hover over the successful completion so people can see the full cohort size? Because there's a question in the chat about the cohort size. So if you look, if you travel across the years, you can see the cohort size, which is the 4th item in that pop-out box, and how that cohort size has changed.
Yeah, so here you see, so the cohort sizes here are about fairly stable, about in 23,000. So that you see here, they have slightly gone down. Here they're a little bit higher again. So they're about between 22 to 24,000 in terms of the cohort. The cohort size changes specifically when you then now select here. If I select all here and the outcome, I switch it now to statistics. So here, the cohort size will be smaller. As you see, there is 15,000 here because these are students who might have started in college algebra, but then had at least one statistics course. Now, again, this can also potentially include business majors who just either started in BSTEM and then at least attended statistics, but it could also be students who switched their major, who were had a BSTEM major and potentially switched to a liberal arts major. You see here the throughput rates, how they have increased over time compared to that one. Here and here you see a few disaggregations. that are available for this one. There is fewer disaggregations available in the BSTEM view, just due to computation size. These are many iterations that a specific software package that we're using. It's called the DisImpact package from R that pre-calculates this. Every single selection, every single data point is pre-calculated, and it's slowly starting to reach capacity of how many it can do, and it's running for weeks. And so we have to unfortunately limit the number of selections we can offer for now, but we will expand it with time. So just if you're wondering why these disaggregation options are not the full list that you've seen with the other two views, we're slowly increasing it because of computation power that you need to calculate all these rates. All right, I think this is kind of what I had as a presentation. So should we?
Yeah, I got a couple questions for you. Oh, someone just made a point that if you switch from BSTEM to SLAM, the view, it will first show blanks. So then you just need to manually switch to the first transfer level course to see the data.
Yes.
So
So when you make certain selection and you go back and you change a filter, then sometimes it's blank and you just have to. So if you do that, and let's say I go back to SLAM, you see this one here, this all is not available in this selection that you've made. So you have to go in here and you have to make a selection here. So anything in parentheses means it's not available, and you have to go through your filters again for the data to populate.
Thank you. And then someone asked, if down the road we could potentially also show the regional comparators or community college districts like we have in the regional view, and we can explore that moving forward.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah. And then also Tammy wanted to know if maybe it makes sense in future versions to separate applied calculus from calculus 1.
Yes, we have considered that. It is unfortunately kind of complicated to operationalize this because we take the behavioral approach to differentiate between students, because we will not know for somebody to be on the business side until they've tried applied calculus. So somebody who starts in college algebra, let's say, or trigonometry, we don't know if they're business or STEM. We only know that as soon as they attempt applied calculus. And so it's difficult to define the cohort of students, because a student could, as we said, could even start in statistics and be a business major, and we don't know that. We don't know their behavior until they've attempted applied calculus. And for that reason, because we taken a behavioral approach, those smaller nuances will not be possible. It would only be possible if we took kind of a declared major approach, which is conceptually very different and has its own drawbacks. But the benefit of that one would be to be able to differentiate those smaller nuances. Kimberly says, taking stats after calculus, these students are more than likely still a BSTEM student who's taken stats because they need it. Yes, that's true. And you can account for that. So if you select the pathway, maybe the term pathway suggests too much of a rigor. It's not necessarily the pathway they've chosen. They've just started in that level. And you can account for that by just switching the outcome and seeing how those students are doing. By the way, let's assume it's a business student, right? A business student who starts in SLAM, and you select the outcome, that business student still counts as a success for that SLAM pathway. So if that student started in statistics, completed statistics, they're still counted as a success here. And then if you select the outcome to calculus 1, and they've also completed calculus 1 within that time frame, they also count as a success within here. So it's not just singular. So this selection does not penalize any cohort or any pathway if that student actually completes those courses.
I don't see any other questions. So I will just put it in the chat. We have the dashboard link, and then within the dashboard, there's methodology to each of the individual views. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat, and then we will post these slides onto the multiple measures assessment project page within a couple days so that people can have access to it and go back to it. Sure. There was one question that came in on the lower rates for African Americans and Hispanics. I don't know if you want to take that one, Loris.
There is many reasons of why, unfortunately, we see these historic differences. I'm not sure if I'm the perfect expert speaking to all the intricacies with this, but we have seen this historically. There is many reasons. I think AB 705 and AB 1705 are here because of these historic underplacement of these students. So many of these students have been underplaced for many years, and it is great to see if you actually look at that. If you look at the rate of African American students in 2020, they're higher than for white students in 15-16. So if you look historically, I think we've closed the gap to the rates in prior cohorts. However, it's a little bit of a raising of all boats where everybody benefits from these changes. And the reasons why these continue and we have not closed equity gaps is, again, these policies are for everybody and the same for everyone, and they do not account for many inequities that still exist in our high school pipelines, inequities that exist in other policies that we see, the practices that we have, the andragogy and pedagogical practices that we still have in our classrooms that also contribute to this. Obviously, also these overlap with many additional things that we do know, such as financial aid. We do also know, for instance, part-time and full-time enrollment is often not equally distributed among ethnic groups. Some groups have more, for instance, are working adults or have family obligations, so that they are not able to be students full-time because they're working full-time. So there is many nuances to this, and I encourage anybody to start looking at their local data. At our college, we're doing that, and we are trying to understand what can we do as a college to dismantle the systemic structures that we've built over the years, so that we can minimize those equity gaps. If any attendee would like to speak to that more eloquently than I did, there is many reasons, and we have obviously also an RP Student Success Conference coming up. There is many sessions on equity where we do learn from your peers to learn on what we can do to actually close these gaps.
So that was well said. Carol Lou has her hand raised, so I'm going to go ahead and allow her to talk. Go ahead, Carol.
Oh, sorry, I just hit the wrong button.
Oh,
no
okay.
question.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.